Mingi 600,000. Haya, wacha niulize, kuna kasichana kalienda hivi. Acha nimwambie Dubai niulize enyewe hiyo kimtoa huyo kijana atafanya job. Iko sawa.
Let us pray. Almighty God, who in your wisdom and goodness have appointed the offices of leaders and parliaments for the welfare of society and the just government of the people, we beseech you to behold with your abundant favor us, your servants, whom you've been pleased to call to the performance of important trusts in this republic. Let your blessings descend upon us here assembled, and grant that we treat and consider all matters that shall come under our deliberation in so just and a faithful a manner as to promote your honor and glory, and to advance the peace, prosperity, and welfare of our country and of those whose interests you've committed to our charge. Amen. Next order.
Order number 1, administration of oath.
Next order.
Order number 2, communication from the chair.
Honorable members, I recognize students and teachers from Ogilgay Primary School in Mosop who are accompanied by the church leaders and opinion leaders of Kapsetek sublocation in Soin Ward. In our tradition of recognizing and welcoming visitors, I take this opportunity to welcome you all to the County Assembly of Nakuru. You're welcome. I'm going to allow the member for Mosop, who is also the majority leader, and later the member for Soin Ward to welcome the visitors briefly, very briefly.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to take this opportunity to actually welcome the students or pupils from Ogilgay Primary School. Mr. Speaker, Ogilgay Primary School is not so far from here. It's within Mosop Ward. And we thought it is nice to give them an opportunity, as they are variously requested during our visits when we go to the ground, that they may come and acquaint themselves with the events of this great assembly. This one also, Mr. Speaker, is actually in encouraging them, because we are making them to be the future leaders. So whenever they visit this privileged house, they get encouraged, they get to learn, they get appreciated, and by the time they go back home, they get that psyche of knowing how good it is actually to be the leader. So for our students from Ogilge, we want to welcome you as the area MCA. Feel very much welcomed to be in this great assembly. And as a leader, we recognize the exemplary performance that you have been doing, more so in academia, and also part of the music festivals that you have been participating. It is a big privilege to know that you are performers. So visiting this assembly today under my invite is actually to say thank you and also to encourage you. This is a house of leaders, and if you work hard, some days, somewhere, we'll be where we are today. At some points, we were students and pupils like you, and we worked through life, and this is where we are today. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, on invite for the Kapsetek people, as the leader of majority of this great county, I greatly want to welcome them also, though the area MCA is around, he'll have his time. These visitors also came under my invites at some times as I was walking around in Kapsetek. As the leader of a majority, we had a great time. These are church leaders, elders, who have been praying for us, praying for this assembly and holding us. That is why we have peace in this great assembly, because when Christ reigns and leads, he makes things easier for all of us. So feel very much welcome, the elders, and I will not say much at this point, because the area MCA of Soin, who is the immediate leader, is also with us, and I will leave that responsibility for him also to equally welcome them to this great assembly. Others welcome, feel very much welcomed in this great assembly. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. The member for Soin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, for giving this opportunity to be able to welcome our visitors who are with us this day. As a leader from Rongai Sub-County and MCA from Soin, let me take this opportunity to welcome students from Ogilge who are coming from our sub-county, and then I highly welcome the church members of AIC Kapsetek who comes from my ward. I want to say welcome. And you have started showing, you emulate, because we have been having students who have been visiting our gallery. So we want to extend even to other churches, as you have set an example. So on behalf of me, I say you are highly welcome. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Thank you. And then thank you for taking time to welcome our visitors. Mheshimiwa Hassan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to welcome students and leaders from Rongai. Mr. Speaker, I want to encourage the students from Mogilgay that I also schooled in Rongai constituency in Mosop ward in a school called Leldet Primary School. It's not far from Ogilgay Primary School, and I want to encourage them that your dreams are valid. I also I went to school, like just the same as Ogilgay Primary School, and I want to tell them that when I used to pass around here, I used to imagine that one day I want to be in this house, but today I'm in this house. So I want to encourage them that it is through prayers and hard work that you'll find yourselves here. Please respect your parents, respect your teachers, for they will give you the way to where you want to be in life. Mr. Speaker, as a leader also from Rongai constituency, I wish also to welcome elders and church leaders from Kapsetek. Mr. Speaker, so many of them, I've known them through the journey of politics, and I've met them through the journey of politics, and I wish to also to welcome them because it's people that I respect. They are like parents to me, so I wish to welcome also them to this house and ask them to continue praying for this house and the leadership of Nakuru County. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity.
Thank you, the Honorable Member from Rongai. Next order.
Order number 3, messages.
There are no messages. Next order.
Order number 4, petitions.
Next order.
Order number 5, papers.
There are papers to be laid. The first paper, or the first business, will be the thanks of the Assembly to be recorded for the exposition of public policy contained in the address of Her Excellency the Governor, delivered on 21st February 2024, to be laid by the Leader of Majority Party.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. My office is on the receipt of a report, a paper which actually captures the speech of Her Excellency the Governor, which was delivered on 21st of February 2024. So the thanks of the Assembly be recorded for the exposition of public policy contained in the address of the Governor, which was delivered on 21st February 2024. Mr. Speaker, pursuant to the standing order, that is number 28, subsection 3, I wish to lay this paper before this Honorable House. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, the Leader of Majority Party. The second paper is the report of the Auditor General on the Nakuru City for the year ended 30th June 2023, to be laid by the Leader of Majority Party.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, my office is in receipt of a report of the Auditor General on Nakuru County persons living with a disability. That is the fund that is for the year which ended on 30th of June 2023. Mr. Speaker, this report was received in this House by our clerk on 17th of May 2024 and was forwarded to this House by CPA Edwin Kamar on behalf of the Auditor General. Mr. Speaker, pursuant to Section 50 of the Public Audit Act of 2015, I wish to lay this paper before this Honorable House. Thank you.
Thank you, the Leader of Majority Party. The paper is properly laid before this House. And next order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Proceed, the Leader of Majority Party.
I'm also in a receipt of a last paper, Mr. Speaker, which actually touches again on the report of Auditor General on Nakuru County, Nakuru City, for the year ended 30th June 2023. This report, Mr. Speaker, was forwarded to this House by CPA Edwin Kamar on behalf of the Auditor General. Mr. Speaker, pursuant to Section 50 of the Public Audit Act of the year 2015, I wish to lay this paper before this Honorable House. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, the Leader of Majority Party. The two reports are hereby now committed to the Committee on PAC for onward action and reports to be presented in this Honorable House. Chairperson, Committee on PAC. Vice Chairperson. A member. Honorable Member for Kapkures, communicate that to the chairperson about these two reports. Thank you. Next order.
Order number 6, notices of motion.
There is a notice of motion by the Leader of Majority Party.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I raise actually to give a notice of motion pursuant to a standing order number 6, Mr. Speaker, that pursuant to the standing order number 28, subsection 4, the thanks of the Assembly be recorded for the exposition of the public policy which was contained in the address of Her Excellency the Governor. Remember that she delivered a speech on 21st of February 2024. Mr. Speaker, I beg to give a notice of motion to allow this Honorable House to discuss the speech of Her Excellency, the Governor of this great county of Nakuru. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Leader of Majority Party. The notice of motion is properly given. Next order.
Order number 7, statements.
Next order.
Order number 8, motion.
Mr. Speaker.
What is it? The Honorable Member for Lakeview.
Mr. Speaker, I wish to move on order number 36 and adjourn this House to discuss a matter of county importance. Mr. Speaker, you can remember that 2 hours before this House I visited your office with a written notice on matters affecting this county, mainly on the disasters that are affecting us. Mr. Speaker, as waters have risen in Naivasha, we have had a disaster in Maimahiu, claiming the lives of people. We have had waters rising within Kehoto area in my area, Mr. Speaker, and the people of Naivasha today in my area, Lakeview Ward, stay just like the fishes of this lake, Mr. Speaker. And as such, Mr. Speaker, I wish to raise on this order number 36 that this assembly discusses such a matter that affects the great people of this county and country. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
So who are the members supporting your cause? Thank you. It is confirmed that the matter is supported. You can now proceed.
Mr. Speaker, before I proceed with this matter, let me start by appreciating the pupils of the Orogegei Primary School, Mr. Speaker, who are in the gallery. Mr. Speaker, if members of this assembly are very observant in the media and social media, you remember these pupils or their colleagues within the school did a very good dance some time ago within the last 3 months. And they hailed one person who we shall be discussing her speech later on in the day. And I want to thank the majority leader that, Alex Lagat, you are such an inspiration to these people that they can go to the extent of knowing what is just for the people and what is right for this country. Mr. Speaker, also let me appreciate the clerics who are here in this House, Mr. Speaker, and tell them that it is their prayers that keep us going. It is their prayers that keep my people within my own jurisdiction, Mr. Speaker, going. Mr. Speaker, let me start now on the address of this order number 36 that I have risen on. Mr. Speaker, a month ago, we have had waters rising within our lakes, Mr. Speaker, and not just in Lakeview Ward, Mr. Speaker. The first major disaster that happened within Nakuru County happened within Maimahiu, Mr. Speaker. The waters or the water banks of a certain dam, Mr. Speaker, claimed the lives of so many people, Mr. Speaker, and displaced so many people, Mr. Speaker. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, a funeral was held, a funeral that was a state funeral for so many other members, Mr. Speaker. The President, the Deputy President, the Governor, all the elected leaders, Mr. Speaker, are teamed or stormed in Maimahiu, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we have had waters rising, like in the last 3 years, Mr. Speaker. We had waters of Lake Nakuru rising, Mr. Speaker, and affecting the lives of the people living around Lake Nakuru here, Mr. Speaker. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, even the offices of KWS within Lake Nakuru, Mr. Speaker, were closed. Today, Mr. Speaker, my people sleep in Dairema, in Naivasha, Lakeview Ward, Kehoto area, Mr. Speaker. In Kehoto area, Mr. Speaker, the waters have risen steadily, Mr. Speaker, to the levels whereby, Mr. Speaker, over 5,000 people are being displaced today. Mr. Speaker, toilets have overflown, Mr. Speaker. We have had people displaced from their own homes, Mr. Speaker. The people who had crops along the shores of Lake Naivasha, Mr. Speaker, all these crops have been dried, Mr. Speaker. They have been washed, Mr. Speaker. And yet, Mr. Speaker, we have not had any essential way that these people have been helped, Mr. Speaker, or even addressed, Mr. Speaker. The people have been left on their own, Mr. Speaker, by both the county government and the national government, Mr. Speaker. It is heartening, Mr. Speaker, that last week, Mr. Speaker, we lost a life within the same area, Mr. Speaker. We have wild animals, Mr. Speaker, roaming around the same area of Kehoto. We have hippopotamus, Mr. Speaker. We have buffaloes, Mr. Speaker, roaming around the same area. We have tiny animals called mosquitoes, Mr. Speaker, who are the spreaders of malaria, Mr. Speaker, spreading and breeding within the same area. Mr. Speaker, as a doctor, I am of knowledge that dysentery, cholera, typhoid, and other waterborne diseases, Mr. Speaker, are to be expected within the area, Mr. Speaker. And as such, Mr. Speaker, the people who will suffer are not just the people who are within the same estate, Mr. Speaker. We are looking at a calamity, Mr. Speaker, whereby the diseases born from there can affect the entire region, Mr. Speaker, of Naivasha. And today, Mr. Speaker, speaking about a population of Naivasha being 355,000 people according to the last census, 2019, Mr. Speaker. In today's date, Mr. Speaker, we are talking about a population of around 400,000 people, Mr. Speaker, within a single constituency. And that will affect neighboring constituencies just as Gilgil, Mr. Speaker. And we have members who travel from Naivasha to this area, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this is a disaster that should be addressed by both this House, the county government, and also the national government. And not just this, Mr. Speaker. I know members here would want to know how prepared are we when it comes to disaster, Mr. Speaker. At the beginning of the year, Mr. Speaker, we had the national government issuing a rat of El Nino, Mr. Speaker. Where did the funds on El Nino head to, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, we are talking about the lives of these people who are affected, Mr. Speaker. And not just this area, Mr. Speaker, around the entire county, Mr. Speaker, just as we had the Sorai Dam affecting people, Mr. Speaker, and people here today, Mr. Speaker, we should not be addressing people after their deaths, Mr. Speaker. Let us run as a government, as a people, as elected leaders, Mr. Speaker, to address these issues when there are no deaths being involved, Mr. Speaker. So I stand here as a bold leader, Mr. Speaker, hailing from Lakeview Ward, Naivasha, Mr. Speaker, and would wish to know the stand of the county government on the people of Lakeview Ward, on the people who are being affected by the floods, Mr. Speaker, and more so on the people of Kehoto. Yesterday, if you watched Citizen TV, Mr. Speaker, you would see waters have flooded even the graveyards, Mr. Speaker, and the toilets, Mr. Speaker. And you have kids playing with the same water, Mr. Speaker. Yet we have a government. This is not a banana republic, neither a banana county, Mr. Speaker. I wish to get the department on disaster management within the county addressing this issue, Mr. Speaker, sir. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. The member for Lakeview. The member for Maimayu.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for allocating this chance. Also for allowing to put my input, Mr. Speaker. I would thank your Honorable Alex for coming up with us a motion to discuss today, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as a member from Maimayu, when we talk about flood, Mr. Speaker, until today, Mr. Speaker, my area, my people are living in panic, Mr. Speaker. because the flood was extreme, Mr. Speaker, and it caused destruction and death, Mr. Speaker, which until today, Mr. Speaker, my people have not yet recovered, Mr. Speaker. As we speak today, Mr. Speaker, we are still searching bodies that are missing, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, since we hold the mass burial, Mr. Speaker, until today, I have not received any information, any plans for our people. And during the burial, Mr. Speaker, or the mass, Mr. Speaker, the national government, the county government, told my people that they are going to resettle them, say that some of the people are not supposed to go back to the places they used to live, Mr. Speaker, because of the danger of water, Mr. Speaker. But until today, Mr. Speaker, I've not received any direction, I've not received any message, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, it's very unfortunate that we are living in panic. And yet, Mr. Speaker, we have a government, Mr. Speaker, which is expecting, Mr. Speaker, to look at the welfare of its citizens, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, also during the burial, Mr. Speaker, the county government, our county government, say that they are going to clear all the hospital bills, Mr. Speaker. Until today, Mr. Speaker, our people are still suffering. They are doing harambes, Mr. Speaker, to cater for some hospital bills, Mr. Speaker. I don't know, Mr. Speaker, what is not happening, and I would like the intervention of this House, because my people are suffering. I would like to know, Mr. Speaker, what are the plans? What is the plan to resettle them? Who is to cater for the hospital bills, Mr. Speaker? Who is to cater, because they are even mentally affected? What is the Department of Disaster doing, Mr. Speaker, to make sure that our people maybe done some counseling so that, Mr. Speaker, they can settle? Mr. Speaker, also, I happen to visit one of the schools that is very close to the areas that are affected with the flood, Mr. Speaker. The school is swampy. Our children are living in a very swampy ground, Mr. Speaker. There are a lot of mosquitoes, Mr. Speaker, as Honorable Harris was saying, Mr. Speaker. And, Mr. Speaker, a mosquito is a very small insect, Mr. Speaker, but should not be sidelined, Mr. Speaker, because the kind of damage that they do to our people is extreme, even more than the big five, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, I have not seen even the county government supplying nets, mosquito nets and whatever, Mr. Speaker. So I would like to know what is the state of our county government, what is the state of the national government, what is the state doing for our people, Mr. Speaker. It's very unfortunate that until today, Mr. Speaker, we are still in a mess, Mr. Speaker. Thank you for the chance.
Thank you. The member for Menengai and the member for Nakuru East, in that order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the chance. And I wish to sympathize with my colleagues, Honorable Alex and my Mahio MCA, Honorable Kamau, because really that is a disaster that is affecting their people. Mr. Speaker, it's a shame for the county government that this is happening, and yet we have a chief officer who is or have been given this department or to run this department, and yet that is something that is we are seeing in the national TV, and he's just or she's just some few kilometers away from where the disaster is. Mr. Speaker, if at all, also when I'm sympathizing with the members, they should realize that this is the government of Kenya Kwanza, and this is their government. They are the people who chose this government.
Order, Honorable Jeff, you started very well. Until now, you diverted to coalitions.
You know, Mr. Speaker, it's good to...
Does it mean that now people would suffer because of... it will be okay for people to suffer based on the government they choose, or do you want to insinuate?
Yeah, I think they should not be crying because this is their government. And the government that they chose is the one that is mistreating their members, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, being in mind that we have money that we had allocated for disaster, and yet something like the Mai Mahiu France happening, and yet there's nothing that is happening. We were told that the members will be reallocated or relocated to areas where they will be safe. They were to be given food, Mr. Speaker, and even medication. And yet, Mr. Speaker, you can hear the honorable member from Mai Mahiu declaring that nothing has happened. So, what can we say, Mr. Speaker? This is the government that is really not helping its people. Mr. Speaker, we would wish that by today afternoon, we would like to see the Chief Officer Disaster entering to Naivasha and having to see how those people can be relocated to higher grounds or areas that they can be safe. Mr. Speaker, when we were passing the budget, we have money for disaster. What is it being used for? So, Mr. Speaker, we would wish that within the next few hours, the team from the county government, being joined by the national government team, should visit the place, Mr. Speaker. We also know that there was money that was allocated for El Nino rains, Mr. Speaker, yet even up to date, there is nothing that we have seen being done with the fund that has been allocated. Mr. Speaker, we can see this is a government that is really not looking to the priorities of the people, because if at all we can have a bigger number of people being misplaced by France, being misplaced by the REC Naivasha funding, Mr. Speaker, that is a shame, Mr. Speaker. So we would request the Chief Officer immediately disperse equipments and make sure that those members of public have been relocated to areas that will be safe, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Thank you. The member for Nakuru East.
Asante sana Bwana Spika kwa kunipa nafasi hii, na pia nimshukuru kiongozi wetu chairman wa budget kwa kuleta huu mswada, na niseme Bwana Spika, ni jambo la aibu sana ati baada ya kama mwezi mmoja bado tunaongelea jambo ambalo hata viongozi wetu walikuwa pale na wakaahidi ya kwamba watashughulikia zile familia ambazo ziliathirika katika mkasa wa Mai Mahiu. Niungane na wenzangu niseme ya kwamba ni jambo la aibu sana eti tuko hapa na wengine wetu wa Kenya bado wanahangaika kwa jambo ambalo serikali tungekuwa tumezingatia. Niseme mwenzangu amesema kuhusu pesa ambazo zimetengwa za mambo ya dharura, lakini niseme ukiangalia katika bajeti yetu ya Nakuru zile fedha ni chache sana. Na si mara moja si mara mbili tumesimama katika hii bunge kusema ya kwamba hiyo department ya disaster iongezwe pesa. Na nashukuru kwa sababu hili jambo limetoka kwa mwenyekiti wa kamati ya budget, na ninatarajia ni pengine wiki mbili zijazo tutakuwa tunajadili bajeti ya county. Na natarajia kwamba tutazingatia hili jambo, na mtu ambaye hajajitayarisha inakuwaga ni aibu sana jambo likitokea. Kwa hivyo tusingoje jambo litokee ndio tuweze kukimbia. Kwa hivyo mimi yangu ni kuomba kamati ya budget waangalie hili swala kwa makini sana ili tuweze kuweka fedha kando kwa jambo ambalo litokea. Na niungane na wenzangu niseme ya kwamba ni aibu sana Bwana Speaker, hapa Nakuru, hasa Nakuru Town West katika ward ya Barut kule chini, maji ya ziwa la Nakuru maji yamekuwa mengi. Na kwa bahati mzuri ama mbaya Bwana Speaker, samaki zimefuata maji katika zile mashamba za watu tumepata samaki. Lakini serikali yetu hii ikiongozwa na askari wa KWS wiki kama 2 zilizopita kuna kijana mmoja alipigwa risasi na akauliwa kwa sababu ya mambo ya kuvua samaki. Kwa hivyo hata mimi ningependa kuungana na wenzangu niseme ya kwamba wacha tukue ni serikali ambayo inazingatia wananchi, inachunga wananchi, kwa sababu sote tulichukua kiapo ya kusema ya kwamba tutakuwa tunaangalia wananchi na maslahi yao. Kwa hivyo tusiwe watu wa kupiga densi katika ile tukienda katika kuzika watu, tunaongea mambo mengi, tunasema vile tutasaidia, lakini hapo tu tukimaliza hilo jambo tunasahau na watu wanabaki wakijishughulikia. Ni majuzi tu nilikuwa naona mbunge wa Naivasha alikuwa ameenda kupatia watu makao na jana pia nakumbuka nikiongea na mbunge ama mwakilishi wodi kutoka Mai Mahiu, nikamuuliza hili jambo la Mai Mahiu kweni bado watu hawajakuwa settle. Akaniambia kwa kweli hili jambo ukikuja ground mambo ni tofauti. Kwa hivyo niungane na mwenzangu niseme tumshurutishe CEO wa disaster wafanye hili jambo likuwe la dharura na tupate ripoti ya kwamba hili jambo kama serikali ya county na serikali kuu tumeliangalia na tumezingatia kwa yale ambayo yanastahili. Asante sana Bwana Speaker, niungane na wenzangu niseme ya kwamba tuone jambo likitendeka. Asante.
Thank you. The member for Kapkures and then the member for Kamara in that order, and then we'll go on the other side.
Asante sana Mheshimiwa Speaker kwa kunipa huu nafasi ili kwa huzuni sana niunge mkono wenzangu kutoka Mai Mahiu na Mheshimiwa Alex kutoka Naivasha. Mr. Speaker, hili jambo limekuwa la kukera sana, kwamba baada ya mvua hiyo kunyesha kubwa, watu wetu wengi wamepoteza maisha, wengine makwao manyumba zimebebwa, na serikali alijafanya jambo la kuhakikisha kwamba wamepata makao mbadala. Mheshimiwa Speaker, wodi jirani na kwangu ya Barut, maji ya ziwa Nakuru yaliweza kuvunja kingo na ikawa imetoa wanakijiji wengi na wakahama. Kwa sasa wanateseka, hawana makao. Nataka kwa huruma sana CEO wa disaster hakikishe kwamba hao wamepata makao mbadala. Mheshimiwa Speaker, tuko na mto Njoro almaarufu Darugu River ambao imepitia kutoka Njoro kwa Heze, imekuja Kapkures na Kaptembwa na ikawa Barut na Ronda. Mr. Speaker, nasikitika sana kukuambia kwamba wanafunzi kutoka Barut, ile daraja ya kipekee ambao walikuwa wakitumia kuvuka kwenda shule, iliharibiwa na maji ama ilizombwa na maji, na sasa wanafunzi kwa wiki 4 hawaendi shuleni kutoka Barut na kutoka Kapkures. Nasikitika sana haswa leo mheshimiwa kutoka Barut amekuwa amehamasisha watu waende wanunue mbao watengeneze daraja ambao mimi niliona kwamba ni hatari na ni kuhatarisha maisha ya wanafunzi. Ningependa sana CEO wachukue hatua ya haraka, kwa sababu tumeweka bajeti pesa ya disaster ili wajenge hiyo daraja ya Soimet ikija Ronda ndio watu waweze kufuka. Mheshimiwa Speaker, kama unavyojua hii wakati mvua ilinyesha, fault line aswa Kaptembwa na Kapkures iliharibu manyumba ya watu, na ningetaka sana Speaker kupitia ile pesa ya disaster tuhakikishe kwamba familia ambao manyumba zao ziliharibiwa wapate kupewa msaada. Pia kuna barabara ambazo hasipitiki kwa sasa, tuko na drainages ambao ziko in a pathetic situation. Naomba sana tuhakikishe kwamba wananchi wetu wamepata kusaidika. Asante sana Mheshimiwa Speaker.
Thank you. The Honorable Member for Kamara and the Honorable Member for Menengai West. And then we take another round of members.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this chance, and also rise to sympathize with the victims of Mai Mahiu and the Lakeview. Truly, yesterday, even me from Kamara Ward, I had some victims from my Mayu. They had to I buried like 2 ladies. There were 2 ladies who were married there, but when water came, the corpses were dumped at Molo District Hospital, whereby they were picked and we married them. So, all in all, nothing has been done to them. So I believe the permanent remedy for this thing is that the government should move these people. Because I believe wherever water passes, if water can pass a given area 40 years, 40 years, maybe I'll be a whole man or a corpse or an ancestor, but the same water will come pass again that given area. So the best thing is that the government of Kenya should move them permanently from the given areas. And also these people, they should understand the amount, the Pelis land that was said about the river banks or along those areas. So people should also be taught to move from those given areas, because I believe draining those waters is hard, and that water is there to remain. Another thing, I also pity the people of Lakeview. I saw it yesterday, especially the men. You know, men, we are African, and at times we need to be a bit outside for a bit of time. But when we are told that an hippopotamus is around the corner, I believe men are really the ones suffering. Recall coming at home at 5:30 and waiting for a hippopotamus. I think it is high time the KWS people, also the government have to do something. So thank you, Mr. Speaker. I do support those people, even disaster. In future, Alex, as a chairman of budget, kindly, we need also that each and every ward should be allocated a bit of money for disaster, regardless the amount of the way. Say a minimum of 500,000 to $1 million. A bit can do some assistance. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Member for Menengai West.
Asante sana Bwana Spika kwa kunipatia hii fursa na pia kukubaliana na Mheshimiwa Alex kwa mjadala ambao ametuelekeza siku ya leo. Kwanza kabisa ningependa kukaribisha wanafunzi kutoka Ogilgei pamoja na wazee wa kanisa la AIC ambao wametutembelea siku ya leo. Karibuni sana kwenye bunge letu. Na kwanza Bwana Spika, ningependa kuzungumzia kuhusiana na hii janga la mafuriko. Mvua huwa ni baraka, lakini ikizidi pia huja na madhara zake. Bwana Spika, ningependa kusema ya kwamba mafuriko yametukumba kama Nakuru County sehemu nyingi, sio peke yake kule Naivasha vile wanavyosema. Kuna sehemu ambazo mvua ilizidi na iliweza kuharibu hata mabarabara, mashamba na hata pia manyumba ziliweza kubomolewa na mafuriko. Bwana Spika, ningependa kusema ya kwamba wale ambao wanahusika katika kitengo cha disaster management, vile mheshimiwa alivyosema, wanahitaji kuongezewa pesa ili kunapotokea janga kama hilo la mafuriko tunaweza kusaidia wananchi. Kando na ziwa zetu za hapa Nakuru kufurika zaidi na kuondoa wakazi wa pale, tuna mashamba pia ambazo zinahitaji kutengenezwa, kufanyiwa terracing. Kama kaunti yetu ingeweza zaidi aswa upande wa ukulima, waweze kutusaidia kutengeneza zile terraces ambazo tulikuwa tunatengeneza zamani, inaitwa fanya juu, fanya chini, ili maji sije ikaondoa ile udongo ambayo ni muhimu kwa ukulima. Pia barabara zetu ni mbaya Bwana Spika. Tumenyamaza kama wabunge hapa, lakini pale mashinani tunaumia sana. Idara inayohusika na barabara Bwana Spika, tunaomba kabisa pia iweze kupewa pesa ili barabara zetu ziweze kupitika. Madaraja pia yamebomoka kama vile tunavyosikia kule upande wa Kapkures, na pia kuna sehemu kama ya Visoi kule Kapsetek mahali mheshimiwa Chemu anatoka. Aliongea hapa hivi majuzi na akasema daraja yake ilibebwa na maji na alikuwa analia sana kwamba angehitaji iweze kutengenezwa. Bwana Spika, wakati huu vile ziwa zetu zimejaa, na pia vile tuliona kwenye runinga Naivasha vile maji ilivyofurika hadi kwenye choo. Bwana Spika, itakuwa ni aibu sana kwa hii karne ambayo tuko ya sasa kwamba kusikia wananchi wameshikwa na kipindupindu na magonjwa ambayo yanatokana na maji taka ambazo tuko nazo hapa karibu na ziwa zetu. Pia Bwana Spika, mvua inaponyesha hata hapa mjini, si mara ya kwanza mvua kunyesha hapa Nakuru town. Mvua imekuwa ikinyesha kwa muda mrefu, lakini hatujaona maji taka yakifurika ikielekea upande wa barabara. Bwana Spika, ningeomba serikali yetu ya kaunti iweze kutusaidia kupatia vijana wetu kazi. Vijana wa hapa London, vijana wa Nakuru town, vijana wa Rongai, pia upande wa Naivasha waweze kupatiwa kazi kufungua hizo mitaro ya kupitisha maji taka. Bwana Spika, imekuwa ni muda mrefu sasa, karibu mwezi mmoja unusu, nimejaribu kuangalia na kuobserve nione kama wale ambao wanahusika wanaweza kufikiria kwamba mitaro zetu yameziba yote. Bwana Spika, ninaomba kabisa wale ambao wanahusika na mambo ya barabara pamoja na environment waweze kuwa facilitated ili mitaro hizo ziweze kufunguliwa na maji taka yaweze kuflow kuteremka kule chini kwenye sewage. Pia Bwana Spika, yale yaliyozungumzwa na Mheshimiwa Geru, alizungumzia kwamba maji ya Lake Nakuru ina samaki, na hii samaki haikuwa pale kwenye ziwa. Yale dams ambazo watu wamekuwa nao kule juu upande wa Njoro na sehemu za juu iliweza kufurika na zikateremka na wale samaki. Na kwa sababu ya hali ya umaskini, ninavyoamini kwamba watu wengi waliweza kutamani kwenda kufua hao samaki. Na kwa sababu ya serikali haiwezi ruhusu hiyo samaki iweze kutolewa pale, kukakuwa na mvutano kati ya serikali na wananchi. Ndipo kukatokea hiyo kupigwa risasi kwa mtu mmoja pale, na yule ambaye alinusurika pia pale kati yao pia ni mwanafunzi wa kidato cha pili. Bwana Spika, tungependa pia kuzungumzia ziwa letu la Nakuru kwamba kama ni halali inafaa tukule hao samaki, tupatiwe wale wataalamu wenye wataweza kutufanyia test ya hao samaki kama wanaweza liwa ama hawawezi liwa, kwa sababu wanasema kwamba Lake Nakuru maji taka yote uteremka pale. Sawia pia na Lake Naivasha, tuna mashamba pale ambazo wanatumia kemikali kunyunyizia maua na mashamba pale. Maji hayo ya mvua inaponyesha uteremka kwenda Lake Naivasha, na sisi kweli tunakula hao samaki wa Lake Naivasha, ni tamu sana. Ninaamini pia hata yetu ya Lake Nakuru ni tamu zaidi. Bwana Spika, ninaomba tujadili kwenye hili bunge ili kama samaki wa Lake Nakuru ni wazuri tunaweza kula, ifunguliwe tukule. Asante sana Bwana Spika, ningependa kusema asante. Thank you.
Thank you. The Honourable Member for Shabab and the Honourable Member for Bahati, in that order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. And also thank you to the Chairman Budget, Honorable Alex, for bringing up this issue of disaster. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to say that it is really sad to see that when the disaster happened in Maimahiu, Mr. Speaker, when it was time to bury those who are dead, Mr. Speaker, the whole of Kenya was in Naivasha, Mr. Speaker. They went there and they did a very nice burial for those people who had died, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, after the burial, everybody left. And the only person who was left in that area, Mr. Speaker, is the area MCA, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I would like to commend the area MCA for the good work that he did during that disaster time, Mr. Speaker. He personally took the initiative of leading his team at the ground and to try and assist the people of Maimahio, and also retrieve people from those who are dead, Mr. Speaker. So, Honorable Member for Maimahio, I'd like to commend you for the good work that you did. But, Mr. Speaker, I'd also like to say that the county government led by our Governor, Susan Kihika, was also in the ground, Mr. Speaker. And as I can recall well, Mr. Speaker, the Governor said, gave an instruction that the county will take care of all the bills and all the burial arrangements for all the people who died in Naivasha, Mr. Speaker. Now, for the people who died, their bills and everything was paid, Mr. Speaker. But now for the survivors, Mr. Speaker, I'm surprised to hear that some of them are still in hospital. Nothing is being done. They have not been. Maybe their bills have not been paid, and they are still in hospital because they cannot pay their bills. And yet there was a direction from the governor, Mr. Speaker, that the bills be paid, Mr. Speaker. It is really a big shame to the county government, because if the governor can give a direction and the people who are working with her cannot effect that directive, Mr. Speaker, that is a big problem to this county, Mr. Speaker. So I'd like to request that the county secretary and the people who are in charge of health, they should go to Naivasha and take care of those bills so that those people can be released from the hospitals, and maybe they be resettled so that they can go on with their life, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, when I come to my ward here in Shaba, Mr. Speaker, we have this problem of water coming from all the way from Kiamunyi and London Ward, and it is really messing up our schools in Shabab, like Muslim Primary and Nakuru West Primary, Mr. Speaker. In fact, the fence of Nakuru West and Muslim Primary was brought down by the floods, Mr. Speaker. And when we went around with the county engineer and the area MP, we realized that this water was coming from London and Kiamunyi, and it was being brought. It was coming through a very big culvert that is feeding a very shallow drainage at the highway from Total going towards Eveready roundabout, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I would like to request the county government in collaboration with Kenha to come up with a very big drainage, a massive drainage that can be able to handle that water that comes from up there in London, and maybe direct it towards Eveready, and then they can see how it will be directed down to Ndarugu, Mr. Speaker, so that the flooding cannot continue happening in our schools, Mr. Speaker. Right now, the students at Muslim Primary and Nakuru West Primary, when it rains, they have to move to safer classrooms until the rain subsides, so that they can maybe go home, Mr. Speaker. So I'd like to request the county government to move with speed and effect our recommendations at the ground. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. The member for Bahati.
Asante sana Bwana Spika kwa kunipa nafasi hii niweze kuchangia katika mjadala huu ambao umeletwa na Mheshimiwa Alex. Pia mimi nataka kuunga mkono wenzangu kwa kusema ya kwamba tunazembea katika kazi mahali fulani. Kwanza napenda kumshukuru Mheshimiwa Kamau wa Maimahio sana kwa sababu ya kazi ambayo alifanya. Sisi wote tulimuonea huruma, tulimuombea kwa sababu aliubeba huo mzigo kwa mgongo wake. Na tunajua ya kwamba MCA ndio ako pale mashinani, ndio anapata shida zote za Wanjiko, maana yeye ndio anakaa na wao. Wakati huu nataka kusema katika jumba hili ya kwamba hata mimi nimekuwa affected. Kwanza mmoja wa wale ambao walipumzika katika Maimahio alitoka katika wodi yangu. Kwa hivyo hata Bahati tuliadhirika. Pia wiki 3 ambazo zimepita, maji yalitoka Bahati yakakuja yakabomoa boma ya mmoja wetu hapo Bahati, na families 24 wakaadhirika kabisa. Hata niliwapeleka Mizpah House of Prayer, ndio nilipewa makaazi kwa wiki 2. Lakini sasa wameenda wakisettle, na nashukuru Mungu maana sisi hatukuwa na maafa. Kando na kusema ya kwamba department ya disaster ichukue ushukani na ifanye kazi ambayo inafanya, pia nataka kutask department ya agriculture. Maana saa hii Bwana Spika, kama tunavyoongea, mashamba mengi chakula ilipelekwa na maji. Kwa hivyo hakuna wakati tutakuwa na shida kubwa kama mwaka huu, maana watu wetu watakuwa na njaa. Na ni vizuri sisi tuweze kuchukua jukumu letu na kufanya kazi yetu kama wajumbe, ili tuweze kuhakikisha ya kwamba kazi ambayo tumepewa tumeitekeleza vizuri. Wanafunzi wengi waliathirika, wengi vitabu zilibebwa na maji, watoto wengi hawana uniform. Na ningeomba tu hata serikali yetu ya kaunti ikifanya hayo mambo yote, pia ishughulikie hao watoto ambao wako nyumbani saa hii bila uniform, bila viatu, bila vitabu na wameshindwa kwenda shule. Alafu pia Bwana Spika, nataka kusema wakati ambapo hata sisi tunaponunua mashamba ni vizuri kuulizia kama njia ya maji imepita katika shamba ambalo tunanunua. Maana maafa mengi yanakuja kwa sababu tunaenda kununua mashamba ambayo njia ya maji imepita, na maji lazima yatapita. So nataka kuomba serikali yetu tuondoe hii aibu ya kuongelewa katika media houses kama jana tuliona katika TV vile ambavyo seneta wetu waliongea. Yale ambayo tunaweza kuyafanya tuyafanye kama county, yale ambayo ni ya national yule ambaye anapaswa kusukuma asukume, ili hii aibu ituondokee na tuweze kuendelea na kazi yetu. I support the motion, hawa watu waweze kusaidiwa. Asante.
Thank you. The member for Malewa West. Of course, you had given your input.
No.
Okay. And then you've also been mentioned because you're the chair roads. Possibly you can, as you input, then you can also input your views as the chair roads.
Thank you, Mheshimiwa Speaker. First and foremost, I would like to welcome our guests today, who are the students from Ogilgay Primary School and the church readers who are here. They feel much welcome. And because we have church readers here, before they leave, they can say a word of prayer in the house so that we can be blessed more. Honorable Speaker, it's I take this matter very seriously. One, as a chair of Roads, Public Works and Infrastructure. We experience a lot of disasters, especially the recent one in Maimahio, where we find we lost many lives, roads were damaged, infrastructure were swept away. And I thank God because we were able, most of the people were survived through that incident, Mr. Speaker. Number one, we need to get well prepared on how to encounter such disasters, meaning we need more resources, especially in disaster department and also in departments of roads. The reason behind this is we experience a lot of rainfall within the county, and most of our roads were swept away, and they were swept in a way that some of the roads are non-repairable, Honorable Speaker. And there is a lot need to be done so that we can bring back the roads. On that, we need totally to have more resources, money reserved, such that when such incidences comes, we are able to handle them. Honorable Speaker, of recently, after the Maimahio disaster, about 2 days after that incident, River Malewa burst its banks, and I know every member here passed along Nairobi-Nakuru Highway, and that water floods along there. Is a village there by the name KCC, where we have around 800 families. Homesteads were affected. they were fully covered with water. And those people escaped luckily because we were able to detect that the river is getting full. Remember that water comes along Ambadea Ranges, down Nyandarua, Kipipiri, and then Morendat, Marewa Ward, then it drains to Lake Naivasha. Meaning that water has a lot of force and causes a lot of damage. If Mheshimiwa Speaker, we are not going to get a solution of evacuating those residents of KCC, and it happened that lanes come again, we are going to experience such a disaster. So as a county, we need to have a lasting solution, not evacuating the people during the floods, and then when the floods or the water levels goes down, the people goes back to the house. That is not the solution. The solution will be, how are we going to evacuate these people? How are we going to facilitate maybe around somewhere? Remember, those people reside there for more than 30 years, 40 years, and they know those are their homestead. How are we going to help them? My chair budget here, Honorable Alex, we have stagnant water or water that comes from Lake Naivasha towards Kehoto. In the real sense, Mr. Speaker, we have the beacons of Lake Naivasha. And we cannot tamper with nature. People have gone towards the lake, Honorable Speaker. Unless we make it as a process, the lasting solution of that thing is, how are we going to make that those people get out from the riparian land, get out from where the water comes, and they go or move on a higher level ground? Why am I saying this, Mr. Speaker? For now, the level of water maybe after a year will decrease, and those people will get back to those houses. Then, the next year, we experience the heavy rainfall. The water will come back. What are we doing? We must have a lasting solution. Where are we going to take those people so that they can be moved on a higher ground? Otherwise, remember, this water is causing harm. We are expecting maybe an outbreak of waterborne diseases, as he states here. There are a lot of mosquitoes there. There are graves. There are people who have been buried there. That water, you might, or we might experience, some of the coffins are brought up on top of the water. Is that what we are expecting? Yes, Honorable Speaker. But what will be the lasting solution? Is those people to be moved to or on a higher ground so that we can avoid such things, Honorable Speaker. We have infrastructures that have been put there. We expect some of the houses, they have cracked totally, completely. We expect engineers to go and maybe to demolish the houses because they are unrepairable. We have roads, and I know Honorable Alex can attest or can support me on that. Of recently, there were some holes, and maybe you expect you are passing, all of a sudden you sink, you end up dying. Why? We are causing death. How? Why? So, Honorable Speaker, we need to have a lasting solution that will make us avoid such scenarios, Honorable Speaker. On that, Honorable Speaker, we have Lake Nakuru here in Naivasha, in Nakuru, and we also in Lake Naivasha. The flowing water that comes from the higher part of our county comes with a lot of soil. The siltations remain on the lake. How are we going to remove this siltation so that even when the water comes, the water will not affect the houses? That means we need to have a serious budget that when this water reduces, the team or the contracted people or the county, because we have the machinery in support of the national government, will do siltation. We will remove all those sediments And when the rain comes and when the water comes, will remain in the rake line. It will not come and affect the residents, Honorable Speaker. I therefore support this motion, Honorable Speaker, and may these, the departments that are fully affected, that is health, roads, and disaster, be fully equipped with the resources so that we can be able to handle this issue. I therefore, those are my inputs. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you. The leader of majority party.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I equally rise to support this matter of county importance on matters floods, which we all agree, Mr. Speaker, it was a bit not so natural. The rains that came were a bit unusual. And we saw it all over, Mr. Speaker, the various parts of the country, how the floods affected lives. It did a lot of destruction. It destroyed homes. It destroyed families. Houses were swept. Roads were also washed away, Mr. Speaker. And the ultimate part of it is that we lost their lives, more so within our county as Nakuru, Mr. Speaker. We feel and sympathize with our colleagues who were directly affected in their wards, though we all were in one way or another. It is only the magnitude that actually differed in terms of the rains, Mr. Speaker. In my own view, of course, as MCA of Mosop, we equally were highly affected. And of course, even recently, when we look at the social medias, there are clips, Mr. Speaker, that are circulating all over in terms of the area called Kabasis, where most of students from the Rift Valley technology resides. The roads were swept, and the trenches are so deep, Mr. Speaker. And people have to became a bit innovative, where they even put small ngazis so that they're able to climb from one gully to another on their way to school, Mr. Speaker. It is a sad situation, and it's not only in the area of Kabasis. We go to the area of Sumek. Roads were highly swept. Fields of maize plantations, beans that were already planted and they were coming, were all swept away, Mr. Speaker. We say this because if you go to the area of Visoi, the area of my neighbor, we saw rivers that we have never seen before, a place that had never experienced such heavy. The rivers that passes our areas busted their banks. And we saw rivers in a very unexpected positions, Mr. Speaker. As we walked along the roads, we found there were rivers at that particular time. Mr. Speaker, we must appreciate, of course, even as a government, this is a disaster that nobody envisaged. We never thought the rains will come in such a way. To us as a government, this should be a learning process of preparing ourselves in terms of when a disaster can strike. And that preparation, Mr. Speaker, will not only wait for it to start from the executive. We also, as a county assembly, should start preparing ourselves, even through our ward funds, that we can think of giving some amounts as we go to the ward funds when we share the little that we have from our various wards, that we can set aside some amounts to wait for an emergency just in case it happens, because this was a bit deep. If we looked at the history, of course, I appreciate my colleagues from the other divide about the preparation of the government. Of course, as a county government, a few things were done within the limits at that particular time. And we thank the country because they came in handy. We saw the president visiting. We saw the vice president visiting. We saw various members of parliament and other leaders visiting the affected areas to offer their own support in their own very small ways. And we must thank them, Mr. Speaker. We have to be thankful for the little that we were able to get, even as a government. But as I say, it is a learning process that we start preparing ourselves. These rains that have come, as our colleagues have put it, may also come again next year. What happens if it comes again? Do we continue crying? Do we continue looking for help everywhere? Do we continue feeling that the government has neglected its people? So we should, because we have the ability now, and we should learn from our mistakes so that we stop doing what we call a knee-jerking type of reactions, that we only react when things happen, and we start thinking and apportioning blames when major things have happened. We now have an opportunity, and more so that even the budgeting is coming. Mr. Speaker, as the House says, and apportion a bit of the blame, we know very well that even there was no budget in terms of foreign emergencies in the budget which just went the other time. We didn't have money. The chair of disaster can tell you, even going to Maimayu, when these emergencies came, there was no budget at all. It was not planned for. The others, issues of roads, we only planned about our Imarisha Mabarabara, and I even pity our colleagues now who actually reinforced their monies for the Imarisha Barabara before the rains came, Mr. Speaker. Now the rains came and they have swept away all those roads. When we go to the Wanjiko in the ground, it is not easy for us, even as elected leaders, because the roads are not there. The Imarisha Barabara money, surely it was put in use. But now the rains came, it's a natural disaster, and has swept away the roads. Where do we get the money again to go back to our Wanjiko to be able to repair these roads? So as I say, Mr. Speaker, this as a House becomes a learning process, that we should plan ourselves. We should schedule and set aside some money so that we can be able to meet emergencies when time comes and when such natural calamities actually happen. So this county did not have a budget. I would want the House to know that. But within the available resources that were there, I think there was a bit of merging of resources so that we were able to meet the needs that were very pressing and urgent. Of course, we saw the governor moving around, distributing food. There are areas that clothes were also distributed, and there were areas where at least trying to put up structures to help the people whose homes were actually washed. So as a government, we did not just sit down completely and not do anything. What we must appreciate is that we were overwhelmed, and the government was overwhelmed because this was a disaster that affected the whole world, Mr. Speaker. Going forward, we would wish to have mitigative measures so that we may not find ourselves in this situation. And I'm very much happy about what our colleagues are raising here. One, of course, in terms of budgeting. We are in a budgeting circle. That even in our budget, because this is the House that approves the budget of this great county, we should put money, enough money, to mitigate for emergencies. And it should be set aside and left as such in case emergencies arise. Again, we should also fast track the hiring of machines. We are here with the chairman of the roads. The roads are not there. Everybody's voices is on him. But what can we do? The small machines that we have, the few machines that we have, some are stuck, others in Kureso, others in Naivasha, and many more other places. But there are very few. Others are not even within good working conditions. So we should set money as a House, even for repairing those machines which are actually broken down. We should also equally set money to increase the purchase of machinery for these issues to do with the roads, Mr. Speaker. We know the good work that the Imarisha Barabara does, but when we are limited in terms of machines, there is nothing much we can do. We'll keep on crying and cry together with the people while we are supposed to be the leaders and offering solutions. So going forward, we pray that this House, in this budgeting, we should be able to increase some amounts in terms for the roads, for emergency. We increase some, copulate some money for the disaster department, which seems not to be having anything much, Mr. Speaker. We have to look for resources here and there so that they can be able to mitigate when such measures actually come. So today as a House, we appreciate and stand together with our colleagues and the many things that have happened. But I will put it that let this be a learning process for us. Let us make decisions that are going to help our people when time is going to come and they really need us. And of course, what we mostly need, we have the policies, we have the languages, we know how to mitigate, we know how to talk about it, but we do not have the amounts, Mr. Speaker. Number 3 also, we have directives that has been given by the governor of this county. So we need the executive, those who help the governor in terms of the CECs and the CEOs, also to pick up their roles actively, that they should not just stay in the offices and keep on expecting us, as the honorable members, to go look for them in the offices and tell them this is what is happening on the ground. They should equally move out of the offices to go and implement the directives that have been given by Her Excellency the Governor on the ground. Let them go and feel it on the ground, the way we feel it as the honorable members, because we are there. We wake up from our wards, we pass through the bad roads, we meet the Wanjiko every day, they line up in our homes every day crying for help and for mitigations, Mr. Speaker. We actually expect that the executives, in terms of the CECs and the CEOs, should come out of their comfort zones, go to the ground also, and actually be able to implement the policies that have been passed forward by Her Excellency the Governor. So we have a duty to do, Mr. Speaker. As a house, we have our part, of course, in regulating and trying to direct the issues of budget. The executive, those who have been given opportunities to serve this county, they also have their roles. They go to the ground and see what is happening. If you go to those areas of tree farm, Mr. Speaker, you will be surprised. The deep trenches that are there. And we'll ask, what else can we be able to do, even if we really wanted to help? What can we do? So let them come to the ground and try to apportion the little resources that are there to mitigate, so that we are not here again discussing a matter of importance in this county without solutions. It's hard to hear honorable members cry, and yet they cannot be helped in any way. We cried that Kenya came and Kenya went. Now what happens to Maimayu? What happens to Visoi? What happens to Naivasha? What happens to Gilgil? What happens to Masop? Now that Kenya came and went, and we have a responsibility to lead these people and offer them solutions. So we pray that something is going to be done from our sides and from the county, the part of the executive, so that we can be able to be leaders who are actually offering solutions to help our people on the ground. Mr. Speaker, I agree this is a matter of county importance, and it should be given the seriousness that it deserves in terms of getting solutions, so that we can be able to move forward and justify our payslip, why we sit in this county and why we are being paid by the taxpayers on a daily basis. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. The Leader of Majority Party. The Chair, Disaster, you will respond last. Then we are going to have the Honorable Member for Buru Baruk, Honorable Gadano, the Honorable Member for Mayela, and then lastly, the Member for Flamingo, in that order.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I join the other members to agree that this is a matter of county importance. A lot have been said, and I agree with it. I saw the pictures from Kehoto, and I have to agree that the situation there is dire. They are sitting at a very huge risk of public health, among so many other incidents that have happened across the county and the country. Allow me to concentrate more on the part of the solution. Mr. Speaker, I think I would want to propose an assessment of the areas that were affected, whether there were lives that were lost or not. We should be having an assessment to the farms, an assessment to the schools. A number of schools reported that their latrines were filled by water. A lot of institutions also had been affected, our farmers. I think we need an assessment to be able to have a quantitative and also qualitative analysis of what the damage has cost. Number two, I also think we need to do concurrently with that a risk assessment, because if we do not do a risk assessment, we will always be reactionary. Mr. Speaker, I also wish to talk about the disaster management bill, which I think we have been going through the committee. I know the chair for disaster is here. it stipulates on how we can handle some of these things without preempting. I believe that is something that will unlock most of the issues that we are discussing here. But more so, when you are looking at the department, the disaster department, we realize that the CEO is not the AIE holder. And so as much as we are giving him a lot of money, or we are suggesting that we give him money or we give her money, the CEO is not in a position to spend the money. So it's also good that because it's a department which has a departmental committee, we could push for the CEO to have an AIE, to be a holder, to be allowed to incur expense, and then we can fund that department on its own other than being attached elsewhere. Mr. Speaker, I think we need to collaborate so much with the executive, especially in all committees, all departments, the roads, health, agriculture, and all those, so that what we are planning here could be captured in the budget. I would wish to propose, and I see that our majority leader is in the House, whether we can have a collaborative meeting where we can bring the issues that we have on the ground as at now. We see how we can capture them and address them in the budget that is alive, so that even as we are starting to implement, we can have a feel and we can have a chance to address the things that we have brought up. Otherwise, I also wish to take this opportunity to thank the county government for the part that they have played. But I also see we have so many areas that we can improve in, especially in following up on what has been said. As we try and reach the county secretary, so that on behalf of the Nakuru County government, he can communicate with the national government where they promised. He is our liaison person. And also through the assembly, we can also try to reach out to the county government so that they can honor the promise that they made to the people of Mai Mahiu. But more so, let those people who are working for the county government of Nakuru be keen on what pronouncements are being made by the governor or by any other person who's in leadership, and they can be able to follow up. We have seen so much of that not being done properly. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. The member for Mayela.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. May I take this opportunity to welcome the pupils of Ogelgei Primary School for this visit they have paid us, so that they can also learn as they are waiting to take over from us, because this is natural. On issues of disaster, I am a member of the disaster committee, and I can tell you, as they put it in Kikuyu, mwikari thabogiti na niwe ui kirieriaga, because we have been in this disaster team now for the second year running, and I can assure you that this is a department that has been ignored completely. I remember that when we came in, we sat down over our bill, and all what we are talking about here would be history. And I believe, because as one of the members have put it, it is now again on the table, we are going to bring it. And one thing I would request members of the House to please support this bill when it will come to this assembly, because it is the only thing that will help us. There's a time the head of state of this nation, His Excellency the President William Ruto, called us somewhere, and he was lamenting on the issue of leaders being the first to complain instead of offering solution. And you find that whenever we are dealing with the budget in this House, it is very unfortunate, Mr. Speaker, sir, that the budget comes like we are in recess, you are called very quickly by our ML, and before we land in this House, the budget is tabled, and before we know it, it has passed. This has caused us a lot of problems, because you realize that some department like disaster has been completely ignored. And that is why, even if this is a matter of county importance, I still have a question over the presentation from the budget chair, because he knows very well what is contained in the budget and the abilities that this budget can to respond towards disaster management. One thing we should understand is that disaster runs across every ward. Every ward should have a public participation, and they spare the disaster some of these allocations so that we can be able to have enough resources. The AIE holder, who happens not to be the CEO of disaster, is left with very, very little option. In my ward, we have buried 3 people. I've buried 2 people who have been affected by this disaster through pneumonia infections, and another one who was drowned the other day. So we are saying that this disaster does not mean that we were not prepared. It only means that even in nations...
Mr. Speaker.
What is it?
I raise on point of information to the House. It has been mentioned.
What is the information related to what the Honourable Member on the floor is talking about?
Must you inform...
And touching on budget specifically.
Is it possible that you allow her
and then
finish and then possibly you can give her detailed information?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I was saying that we in Kenya are not exceptional, because we saw it all over the world. Even the most prepared countries were unable to handle this disaster. So it doesn't mean that there was any unpreparedness. What I'm trying to narrow down is on our ability as members of this assembly and as a member of the disaster team to be proactive on matters disaster. If I can quote, and let it also be noted, the disaster team in Naivasha were the first to arrive at Maimayu. They arrived at that place at 9 in the morning. Those people worked tirelessly until the program was over. But I can assure you they were not paid a penny, neither were they provided with lunch, even for gloves for working. While every other department, including health, was able to pay those people who participated. The disaster team, even today, I had to visit the disaster CEO last week at his office in Nakuru to remind him that the 18 personnel who attended this disaster, even cleaning the bodies at the mortuaries at Naivasha, were not even given a packet of milk during this exercise. And if I'm wrong, I think it will be put, I'll be notified. The other thing that happened is that even the team that is disaster, the chairman had to introduce himself even at Maimayu, because nobody recognizes even the presence of the Department of Disaster. This will tell you how long it will go even to affect the whole world. In last year, we tried to request for the budgetary allocations and every other activity from the department. It never came. Even today, we have never received on what activities were carried out by the department from the CEO 2022-2023. This is 2024-2025. We even have discussed on them tabling a quarterly report of what they are doing at their end. It is not forthcoming. I remember that some of the information that were tabled were highly questioned by the members of the disaster committee. It is very unfortunate that we are talking as if we do not understand that this disaster committee is supposed to work with budgetary allocations that are the first to be struck off from the budget when this budget is being passed. It is a learning lesson, and it is something that we should all act on proactively so that we can be able to avert some of these things. If you look at the people in the office, and I give example of roads. I have roads in my area that have been affected by the disaster that has been ongoing. It is yesterday I sat with the engineers at the headquarters, and I requested them not to send machineries and operators to the ground. You don't send a grader in Maela, where all the roads are just deep gullies. What will that grader do? We need a lot of information from those who are in the offices so that we can be able to rehabilitate our roads and be able even to move forward without experiencing a lot of losses. When it comes to the budgetary allocation. When it comes to the budgetary allocation, we require that these amounts that are being put aside, as it has been put here, to also consider rehabilitation after the disaster. I'd also put a request because in my area, we have already relocated a whole village. We no longer live in that village. It is called Huruma because it is uninhabitable. And we are in the process of looking maybe for alternative areas that we can relocate these people. In most of these areas, we require other departments. I don't know whether it was mentioned on land department, so that they can be able to advise on the terrain and on other areas whereby we can maybe allocate land if there is any available in this particular area. I also have a problem. We are making a visit as a disaster committee to Maela because we are suffering from seepage of all the dams that are uphill in Maela. You wake up in the morning and a dam has disappeared. And once that dam disappears, it meets us downstream at areas where people are settled down the valleys, and we are experiencing a lot of this runoff and floods that are not ceasing. Therefore, I would only want to request that even as we consider this as a matter of county importance, let us not talk now because individuals are affected. I remember very well when I arrived in this assembly, I was told that I was put in the disaster committee because Maela is the center of disasters. But God is good because it has now been established that the disasters cannot only happen in Maela. I remember also a very, very prominent politician, and I want these ones also noted, who said that we should not be talking about lands in the Bibi, and I should not be preoccupying myself with land. I should wait for disaster to come. They will come to rescue me. But the God of Maela also doesn't sleep. It is not us who are rescued, and God has continued to protect us. So what I'm saying is that we should all take responsibility because disaster cannot be said to belong to one area. It is something that will affect us around. Otherwise, I also support that all should be done to make sure that this county, because I remember that morning when we arrived in Maimayo, the Kiambu County was all over with roads of mattresses and beddings. So we should also be able to make sure we equip ourselves so that we can be able to be competitive and to respond with all that is required whenever such disasters strike. And finally, Pole sana to the MCA for Maimayo. We know you did a great job. May God bless you as you serve your people, because this is why we are here. We are not here for any other reason. We are here for what we shall tell Wanjiku that time when it will come, because they'll be there to question us. So I believe the MCA for Maimayo, you have created yourself a space, and may God continue to protect you, and may that disaster never come back again in that area or in any other ward. We cannot wish what happened to Maimayo as people have been wishing Maela, because I know the wearer knows where it hurts most. So we are together with the people of Maimayo. We wouldn't wish it to anybody, even as many people wish Maela to go down that route. We shall not go down that route. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Thank you. The member for...
Mr. Speaker, I was on point of information.
Yes, you will have your time. Allow the honorable member for Flamingo, then the honorable, the mover, who is also the chair budget, and then the chair disaster will finish this input.
Asante sana Mr. Speaker kwa kunipea hii nafasi ili niweze kuchangia hii mambo ya muhimu kuhusu kaunti yetu ya Nakuru. Na kwanza ningetaka kukaribisha wanafunzi wa Olgirgei kutoka huko pande ya Mosop, na pia leaders wa kanisa kutoka pande ile ya Soin Ward. Niseme nataka kushukuru kwa Mheshimiwa Alex ambaye ni member ama ni chairman wa budget, ambaye ameleta hii mjadala kwa wakati ufaao, na pia nimwambie ya kwamba tunashukuru kwa sababu yeye ndio mwenyekiti wa budget katika kaunti yetu ya Nakuru. Pia Mheshimiwa Honorable Kamau wa Maimayo, tunataka kukushukuru kwa ile kazi nzuri ulifanya, na pia tupatie watu wa Maimayo wote pole kwa kupoteza watu wengi sana katika hilo janga la maji ambalo liwapata pale. Bwana Speaker, mimi ningetaka kushukuru kwa sababu wakati Mheshimiwa Alex ameleta hii mjadala leo ni kuonyeshana ya kwamba yeye kama Mheshimiwa wa Lakeview Ward Naivasha ameguzwa. Na wakati ameguzwa ni kuonyeshana ya kwamba we can be able to discuss these matters concerning our county Tukuwa hapa kwa assembly, tukuwa kama wajumbe ambao wamechaguliwa. Bwana Speaker, ningetaka kuuliza hii bunge ya kwamba because already tuko karibu sana kuleta ile makadirio ya budget yetu ya county, na tutaijadili maybe kulingana vile nimesikia Mheshimiwa Alex amesema kwa wiki 2 ama 3 zijazo tutakuwa tumejadiliana. Wakati tumekuwa kwa uongozi, kwa hiyo zaidi ya mwaka mmoja na kitu imepita, Bwana Speaker, tumekuwa na majanga mbalimbali, na hata kabla tujachaguliwa kwa hii bunge la 3 tulikuwa na ile janga la Mai Mahiu, Bwana Speaker, na tukajadiliana, na hata sisi wakati tulikuwa nje tukajaribu kwenda kusaidia wale watu wa Sorai ambapo walikuwa wameathirika na hiyo janga la maji. Na Mr. Speaker, ni kuonekana kwamba sisi kama county assembly ama county government of Nakuru tujafanya ile mambo ambayo tunafaa kufanya ili tuweze kuzuia majanga kama hayo. Na kwa sababu huu ni wakati mwafaka, ningetaka kuuliza sisi kama wabunge na pia serikali ya county tuweze kuongezea pesa kwa hiyo idara ya janga ama disaster management. Na vile tumesema tumekuwa tukienda pale kwa wakati mwingi na tunaambiwa hakuna pesa za kutosha. This time around, Bwana Alex na sisi ambao tunahusika, we need to see that hiyo department ya disaster management imewekwa pesa za kutosha, so that wakati tumepata janga kama ile yenye tumepata, tunaweza kuharakisha hiyo jambo la haraka ili tuweze kusaidia watu wetu. Umeona wakati tulikuwa pana Naivasha, wakati tulikuwa Mai Mahiu, na Mheshimiwa Governor akasema ya kwamba yeye kama serikali ya county italipa bili zote zenye za wale watu waliathirika. And it is very unfortunate, Mr. Speaker, that today tunasikia Mheshimiwa Mai Mahiu akisema ati kutoka wakati tulitoka pale hakuna kitu imefanyika. Kwa hivyo tungetaka kupongeza governor, atuseme tufuatilia kwamba alisema bili zote zitalipwa, na tuone ya kwamba wale watu wa Mai Mahiu hawadhiriki kama ama wakuwe tortured katika akili zao ya kwamba ati bado wako na hiyo mzigo ambayo wajalipiwa hiyo hali ya afya ama matibabu katika hospitali zetu. Pia Mr. Speaker, wale watu wa Mai Mahiu tulikuwa wakati kulikuwa na speeches, kulikuwa na wale watu ambao kama Safaricom ambao walisema wana partnership na national government na pia wana partner na Nakuru County ku make sure wale watu ambao walihamishwa katika hizo area ambazo ziliathirika ya kwamba watajengewa manyumba na zitaanza immediately. But bado it is very unfortunate that tunasikia kuna kitu imefanyika. Tungeomba kukuwe na kamati pia ambayo itafuatilia hiyo mambo, kuhakikisha hiyo mambo imefanyika na wale watu wamesaidika. Bwana Speaker, pia ningetaka kuongelea mambo ambayo yameongelewa pana wajumbe wengine kama Mheshimiwa Geru, ambayo tumesema tuko na Nakuru hapa, Mr. Speaker, ambayo imekuwa ikijaa maji ambazo unakuja zina race inakuja juu kila wakati. Na zaidi ya miaka 2 ama 3 tulikuwa na ile janga ambayo pia kulikuwa na damu nyingine ilisimama ilibust na samaki wakaweza kukuja pale Nakuru, na ikawa sasa ni kama msaada ya watu wa hii area yetu wafaidike nao, wapate kutega samaki na wapate lishe ya kila siku na wapate mapato. But it is very unfortunate, Mr. Speaker, ati tunaona sisi watu wa hapa kwetu tuna samaki mingi ambazo zinauzwa katika hii town zinatoka hapa Nakuru, na unakuta wale watu ambao wanatega samaki pale, Mr. Speaker, ambazo zimetokana na hii majanga ya maji, wengi wao wanaruhusiwa kutega samaki kwa njia ya kinyume na zinakuja zinauzwa hapa, lakini wale vijana wetu wadogo ambao wanaenda kutafuta samaki moja kukula, Mr. Speaker, unapata ya kwamba ati hao ndio wameathirika, wamejaa hapa katika prison. Na wengine, Mr. Speaker, umesikia tukisema ya kwamba iko mmoja wetu ambaye alipigwa risasi pale akitega samaki. Mr. Speaker, this is the high time wakati tunajadiliana maneno ya majanga ili pia tujadili maneno ya Nakuru ambayo pia unajua inapiga kingo zake na zinaweza kuingia kwa maproti za watu wanahamishwa and nothing is happening, Mr. Speaker. Kwa hivyo tungetaka tujadiliane kuhusu hizo samaki, tuone kama ni mzuri za kuliwa na wananchi, na vile pia Bwana Speaker tutaweza, because I want to relate hiyo issue ya samaki, Mr. Speaker, na janga ambalo zinapata kama hili la maji, because already those fishes zililetwa na samaki ambao walitoka pale pengine. Kwa hivyo tuweze kujadiliana, tuone katika serikali yetu ya county vile tunaweza either kupata revenue na wale watu ambao nao wanafuga samaki pale waweze kusaidika, ili waweze kupata vijana wetu wapate kazi na ili watu wapate kuendelea vizuri katika mtaa wetu ya Nakuru. Kwa hivyo Mr. Speaker, ninashukuru kwa sababu wakati tunashughulikia hizo majanga, tunataka tukileta budget tuongeze pesa za kutosha so that we can be able to prevent hizo mambo, ili tuweze kuprevent hiyo mambo ambayo
allow him to. Is it the information related to that or it's
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
You need to be upstanding or
asante sana Speaker kwa huu nafasi ambayo nimeweza kupata. Nataka tu kutofautiana na mwenzangu mheshimiwa.
Order. The honorable member from Kerget. Have your seat. Nitakupea nafasi yako ujadili hoja zako. The honorable member for Flamingo, finish up.
Asante sana kwa kuni prevent kwa sababu yeye ni tofauti analeta si kuinform, but sasa ningetaka pia mimi yangu tu ni machache, tuweke pesa za kutosha so that kwa ile majanga ambayo itakuja in future tuweze kuiprevent mapema kabla ijatupata. Asante Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. The Honorable Lea Saram.
Asante sana Speaker. Nilikuwa nimjulishe mwenzangu kwamba mambo ya samaki pamoja na udhabiti ambao tunatakiwa kuangalia, sio hii nyumba pale ni experts kama vile CEO wa public health alikuwa ametuambia kwamba hizo samaki haziwezi kuliwa na binadamu na ziko na sumu. Asante.
Thank you. The member for Lakeview.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, earlier on I had risen on a point of information informing the House. Mr. Speaker, this point arises from what Honorable Jane from Mayela has alluded, that matters budgets are pushed to the Assembly and the majority leader is asked to call people when they are on recess. Mr. Speaker, budget doesn't happen that way. So I'll kindly ask members to stay away or devoid of what I can say a repulsive paranoia, Mr. Speaker. Why I state that, Mr. Speaker, on the 30th of April, Mr. Speaker, the budget estimates were tabled in this House, Mr. Speaker, and they were deemed to be committed to all the committees, Mr. Speaker. And at the moment, Mr. Speaker, I have made several announcements in the pages, Mr. Speaker, that the budgets are available within this House, Mr. Speaker. I have also done something, Mr. Speaker. I've sent a soft copy of this budget both to the elected members on the group, Mr. Speaker. I've also done it right now on the communication group for this assembly, Mr. Speaker. So there is nobody in this assembly who has no access to any budget for any scrutiny, Mr. Speaker. So the entire assembly, Mr. Speaker, has all this budget at their hand, Mr. Speaker. And the Committee on Budget and Appropriation coming next week, we shall be expecting the various chairs to state whatever they can. Also, Mr. Speaker, let them not forget that this budget, Mr. Speaker, is specifically taken from the time that we started September last year, Mr. Speaker. We cannot come here today, Mr. Speaker, and overhaul an entire budget. According to the PFM Act, Mr. Speaker, we can only take care of 1% of that budget, Mr. Speaker. We don't have any other role as per the committee to interfere with the entire budget. Mr. Speaker, the disaster committee, Mr. Speaker, should understand very well, because the member comes from the disaster committee, that the budget is defended at the cabinet level, Mr. Speaker. It is what the CEC disaster or the CEC in charge of disaster present to the cabinet, Mr. Speaker, that is brought to this assembly, Mr. Speaker. And we cannot antagonize what has been indicated there from the cabinet, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we don't formulate our budget from utopia, Mr. Speaker. Our budget, Mr. Speaker, is formulated from one and a policy, Mr. Speaker. Whatever policy the disaster committee will set, whatever they will defend at the time of CFSP, Mr. Speaker, that is what we as a committee are regulated to act with, Mr. Speaker. So this notion, Mr. Speaker, of stating that members have been called, I don't know from the bush or from where, Mr. Speaker, to come and pass budget, it is sickening, Mr. Speaker, because it is meant to distort the line of thought of such a debate, Mr. Speaker, that is of county importance, Mr. Speaker. This debate has been debated here for almost 2 hours, Mr. Speaker. Yet, in other state of county importance, Mr. Speaker, we hardly take 30 minutes, Mr. Speaker. It means, Mr. Speaker, we must accord a debate of a county importance the respect it deserves, Mr. Speaker, without maligning other people or other committees, Mr. Speaker, or trying to scatter, to push an agenda, Mr. Speaker. The Committee on Budget is committed, Mr. Speaker. And until 19th of June, Mr. Speaker, we are ready as a committee to take any ushauri that the members of this great house will have, Mr. Speaker. Also, Mr. Speaker, we shall prepare a day, Mr. Speaker, when we can also go through the budget with the entire house, Mr. Speaker. So we cannot this time around come and say, Mr. Speaker, that we have a disadvantage here, Mr. Speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, let me also, just as we were reading our quarterly reports, Mr. Speaker, we cautioned on the disaster committee, Mr. Speaker. And I remember I talked to the chairperson on disaster, Mr. Speaker, and asked, what is the policy that is driving or riding on the monies that we allocate, Mr. Speaker? Last financial year, Mr. Speaker, we allocated 70 million Kenyan shillings for the purpose of disaster, Mr. Speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, when a house is raised down with fire, let's say in Marewa West, Mr. Speaker, you have brought unga, you have brought blanket, Mr. Speaker. I think those people and a policy should be formulated that the person needs iron sheets, Mr. Speaker. They need the reconstruction of the house, Mr. Speaker. They need something that will put a roof. The people can be under a roof, Mr. Speaker. So I think all this, let us not lose sight of what we are discussing here, Mr. Speaker. And, Mr. Speaker, this is a very concerning matter, not just for the people of Lakeview, not just for the people of Maimahiu, but this is something that is affecting the entire county, Mr. Speaker. Sorai area, Mr. Speaker, is not in Naivasha, Lakeview, Mr. Speaker. And it's not only one region which is meant to receive disasters. There's no ward in Nakuru County that is called Hell Ward, Mr. Speaker. We only have Hell's Gate Ward, Mr. Speaker. But other members would want their place to be referred as the Hell Ward, Mr. Speaker. But I think that would not be a proper way of working. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
The chair, disaster.
No, point of correction, Speaker, please.
No, we proceed. The chair, disaster, finish up. And possibly as you will be finishing up, so much has been raised about the policy, about the bill. You inform the House, what are you doing about that, what the committee is doing, in as far as even having a fully fledged department, because from what we are gathering here, it's like you are an extension of another department. You don't have a fully fledged department.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, for giving me this opportunity to respond to the members' views concerning today's motion. I would like to thank the honorable member who raised this motion today, and I fully support the motion. And I thank the members for the sentiments you have given. All the contributions will be taken seriously. And Mr. Speaker, sir, the disaster cuts across all departments, and the recent disaster that was witnessed in Maimayu actually put us as a county at a vulnerable state. It is commendable that the national government, led by His Excellency the President, was in Maimayu. It's also commendable that our governor took it very seriously and mobilized all the resources that were required at that time to support the people of Maimayu. It is also but it is disheartening to hear from the member of County Assembly from that area that there are a number of bills that have not been settled, and it is not good, and it will be followed up to ensure that the people who suffered do not continue suffering, Mr. Speaker, sir. Now that they suffered the other time and they were really saved, we know we lost a lot of lives, and those who survived should really be supported to continue with their life. Mr. Speaker, sir, we have a number of bodies, water bodies across our county, and Lake Naivasha being one of them. And the recent, what is going on now in Kyoto, we empathize with the people of that area, Kyoto, like the rest of those who are really suffering because of the problems of water. This issue of flooding, the issue of our lakes actually passing the banks, is because of the climate change, issue of the climate change that is actually global. It is a global problem, and to mitigate the problem, we request all the members to really participate in taking and actually participating in those measures that are reducing, that can reduce the impact of the negative effects of the climate change. We are supposed to participate in actually tree planting and do all those things that will reduce the loss of life. After Maimayu problem, a lot of roads in those areas, even across the county, were destroyed. But we are happy that various departments are taking action. For example, the Committee on Roads will be making a trip to Maimayu to assess the situation and actually make recommendations as required. We would like to insist that the rest of the areas that were affected also be taken into consideration. But the major issue that we have, Mr. Speaker, is that the Department of Disaster in this county has not been given real capacity. They do not have the capacity to carry out all the emergencies. So in this case, recently we sat with the committee members and we saw the importance of having the bill being produced, being reintroduced into this House so that some of the policies may be enacted and passed to actually change the situation at the department so that the department may not remain the way it is now. It should, because this department is actually very important, it should be a fully fledged department. We, according to the committee, we should have a CC in charge of this department so that during cabinet meetings, the cabinet member in charge of that department will defend the budgetary allocation plus all other issues that affects the department. The situation now is different. We are domiciled in a different department that is, whenever the cabinet member is there, chances of her or him defending what is really affecting her own department is very high. We are at PSDDD, but even our CEO is not yet AIE holder. So it becomes a bit difficult, and we are requesting this House, when this bill is brought in, let us support it, let us give it the seriousness it deserves, so that we can have CEC in charge of disaster in the county. Because the way it is, we've had a lot of disasters, not only as far as flooding is concerned, even fires and all that. That requires urgent attention. But the department is not fully funded. Across the wards, we had flooding. For example, in my ward, Mauche, we had a number of bridges that were swept. The roads are now devastated, and something should be done. For example, Chebitet Road, which is now impassable. A number of children are not able to cross to the various schools. For example, a school in Kapkembu, Teret High School, and even Sarame, all those bridges were really swept. Most recently, we had at Naswit Ward, where Honorable Tanui comes from, we lost 2 children, 2 sisters who were trying to cross River Ndarugu. And they were swept. And this one also immediately exposed us as a county to another loophole. We do not have divers in our county. So it means we should also put money to ensure that divers are trained, that they are employed on permanent basis to save situations, especially across the county. That we commend the local divers in Nashvit and Maushia who came in to assist in the retrieval of the bodies of those children. But it took us a long time to do that. But we thank the disaster department. They responded, but they don't have the permanently employed divers, and they had to rely on the local divers. So the Department of Disaster is trying, but they have got very limited resources. We've also had the contribution of the members on the way they should respond and what should be given whenever a disaster occurs. For example, the disaster have been giving out iron sheets plus food items. Why these food items are normally given out is because families normally, you save the situation first as far as the stomach is concerned, and then you continue actually giving out the shelter. But the resources are not enough. We thank Her Excellency the Governor. Recently, she went around distributing food items and supporting families that were really affected by the flooding. And that was a good move. But according to what is known, there are a number of reports, so many reports that were given to the disaster department that have not been read. For example, in my ward, there's a place called Chebitet. There's a family that was affected. Food items were swept away because of rain, floods, and they lost everything, but they have not been able to receive the support from the county. That is because of the capacity, because of the transport and all that. So, but we are wishing that whoever has a problem will be assisted by the county. But let us, for now, the situation is understandable. I think the ball is on our side, and the budget team to really support us to ensure that we have enough or sufficient budgetary allocation so that we can help our population at the time of need. Otherwise, all members' views have been taken seriously. And before I conclude this, I would also wish to say that we should have scheduled inspections, to our dams, scheduled inspections to the ponds that we have, the water ponds that we have across the county, so that our population living on the lower side may be saved. You remember there was a Solai issue. Many of our people were killed, and several other areas. Recently, the Department of Roads and the Department of Disaster collaborated, and I think a number of disaster problems were averted because some of the machines were sent to open up the bunds and the dams that would have caused serious problems to our population. But we wish that the county now will have a fully fledged department that will also have people who will be going around to mitigate, to check that if there is any danger, that problem is solved early before we lose life. Mr. Speaker, sir, I want to thank all the members for their contribution. I also want to thank the team, the roads team, for planning to visit Mayo to assess the situation. I think that is the way it is. Tomorrow at 8, members are invited. You can also be there. The disaster team will be visiting Mayela and Baruch ward also next week to mitigate on an issue that is coming up. We are wondering that the dams in Mayela are seeping. They are disappearing. There is water seepage, and we don't know whether that one can cause problems. Is it seeping so that it can open up in an area where the population is? So we are going to look at it and make appropriate report. Otherwise, Mr. Speaker, sir, thank you for this time, and we wish that after this budget, the disaster department will be vibrant, and we as members of the committee, we are ready to discharge our mandate of ensuring that the funds that have been allocated will be used as required by law. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Chair, I will give a direction that your committee, that the Committee on Disaster Preparedness, within 21 days, looks into the matters that have been raised by honorable members, and specifically on 26th June, note that date, the committee brings a report, a fully detailed, very conclusive report to this honorable house. So chairperson, take note. Chairperson, Committee on Disaster, take note.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Point taken.
Next order.
Those are the orders of the system, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable members, this house is adjourned to today, 2:30 in the afternoon. Thank you.